Hello and thank you for tuning in to Millennium Movie. So Servant Season 4 Episode 3 is directed by M. Night Shyamalan and it's called Seance, and like we can come to expect with M. Night, there's a lot of weird camera angles, there's some odd framing, in particular there's this one scene with Julian who has the two live-in nurses by his side on the couch on each side of him, and one of the nurses is kind of cut off half, she's kind of, in the corner of the frame and she's cut off, like you can only see half of her body, and it's just the weird choices like that where you're only going to get that with M. Night Shyamalan, but we love to see it and we love to have him come around and actually direct one of the episodes. So in this episode we really get to see the results of Dorothy hiring those two live-in nurses to help her speed up her recovery as well as protect her from Leanne. And I thought that this was, it's very, very early in the season, but this was the best of the three so far, and the other two are really good, but what this does is what every other season of Servant has done is that, with each episode, as each episode passes along, we get a steady incline in terms of, quality and the tension, as well as we get some levity here with some comedic bits that I really enjoyed, and that's the good thing of having these two live-in nurse characters, sort of be the, sort of playing the straight man characters where like they have no idea what they're walking into with such a messed up family here with the Turners. And two bits that I really loved with the nurses before we dive deep into the suspense and terror of this episode is the little book that they got for Leanne, which was called, I think it was called something like Social Skills for Teens, and Leanne just immediately threw it away. That was hilarious. That was funny. And then, of course, Julian trying to sneak into the room to find out any dirt on them to see if they're coming from Leanne's cult or her former cult. But instead, he finds the sex toys that are under their beds, and he gets immediately grossed out by it. But then he has to put it back to make sure they don't realize that there's someone going through their stuff. It's all brilliant stuff. I love that part of this episode. The comedic bits that brought some levity to the rest of the tension that came with this episode, because there was a lot of it, specifically with Leanne and the nurses, and how she really doesn't trust them because she thought that they're coming from the cult, and that she thinks that that they're just playing a game with her. They're just trying to make pretend like they have nothing to do with anything other than they're just normal two live-in nurse ladies. Well, it turns out at the end that is the case, because Leanne, after we have a seance sequence, which was really well done, by the way. A lot of these can seem really cheesy when we get them in film or television, but in here I thought it was shot and acted and executed very well. It had the right level of spookiness, as well as some comedic levity again with Julian really not wanting to believe it, but then by the end with where what one of the nurses was saying, the things that she was saying out loud were things that all made sense to him and Sean as well. And both of those two characters, I thought in this episode, by the end of it, much like with last week, but even more so here, we're starting to see characters like Julian and Sean come around to the idea that, having Leanne around, while it did have a lot of benefits in the beginning and the earlier parts of the Servant series, now I think they're starting to realize that she's becoming a little bit more trouble than she's worth. And I think that's what's going to lead into the end of the season, where the entire Turner family is going to have to come together to put a stop to Leanne and get her out of their lives, even if it means having to face the horrible truth of what Dorothy allowed to happen to Jericho. So really great stuff there. Again, the terror that comes with Leanne attacking one of the nurses, thinking that she's someone from her cult, and that she checks her back and kind of rips off the back of her clothes to see if she has any scars, and just the craziness and wackiness that ensues with that. And then Dorothy taking a stand and telling Leanne, hey, you made a mistake, you messed up, now get out. That was something that Dorothy was not being able to successfully do to her in the previous episode, but here we see that Leanne has no other choice but to just, accept they accept the loss, and just she takes off. And then we get a really nice sweet scene between Dorothy and Sean, which was really nice because we haven't been getting that much this season, or even for that much, last season as well. But here we start to see Dorothy finally just open up a little bit, not a lot, but in the earlier part of the episode we saw that Sean made this dish for her that she used to really love in their early days of their relationship, but she just completely blows him off. She doesn't want the food, she doesn't want to talk to him, she doesn't want anything to do with anyone at that moment. And then by the end of this episode, when he makes her blueberry pancakes, which is another one of her favorites, she says that, hey, you got to understand that things are different right now. Like, we can't keep pretending like nothing is wrong here and that nothing is out of the ordinary, when in fact it is. And she tells him again to, please to leave, but then she gives him that just a little bit of an opening of a little bit of vulnerability shows in Dorothy, and she asks him, please leave me the pancakes, and she lets him, put his hand on her shoulder just for the briefest of moments, and it's just speaking to the fact that there is still that love there between Sean and Dorothy, and it's just going to be a matter of the only way to save their relationship is they're going to have to face and deal with Leanne together, even if at the very end it's going to mean that Dorothy's going to have to face the horrible truth of what she did to Jericho. But in the long run, to save their marriage and to save their family, they're going to have to deal with the consequences of facing Leanne and dealing with the reality of what happened in their past. Overall, a very solid episode. I'm very much looking forward now to episode 4 of Servant season 4. And yeah, this has been all the sort of things that I wanted to talk about, the highlights of this episode for me at least. But I'm very curious to know what are your highlights for this episode and what you're thinking of the season so far. And if you have any predictions for the future episodes, please drop them down below as well, because I'd love to have a conversation with you guys as always. But until next time, this has been Melanie Movies, and I'll see you all very soon.